Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new League of Legends video. It's time to take a look at the best champions for patch 7.4. There are definitely going to be some names that you recognize, but there's also going to be some new names, and one of them I'm kind of taking a little bit of a risk here bringing him up, but I genuinely feel like he is a pretty damn good champion. Now this video will be made in collaboration with ProGuides, a very familiar name. It's a website that tries to improve your overall League of Legends gameplay and knowledge. I have a link to their website down below in the description that I highly recommend checking out and trying out their free trial. There's really nothing to lose. But without much further ado, let's get right into the top Freelo champions for patch 7.4. So I want to start things off by talking about a pick that is completely sort of unorthodox in a way. Not something I'm sure any of you expected to hear, but that pick and that champion is Singed. Now let me explain why I'm talking about Singed. First of all, I'm seeing a lot more Singes around Diamond, mid-Diamond-ish elo. A lot of people playing him and to some pretty damn good success, I might add. For instance, one game I picked Zed mid and I ended up facing a Singed in the mid lane, and killing him was literally impossible. So essentially he just counterpicked me. I couldn't snowball off of him at all. I couldn't even really outpush him, and it definitely made my life much more difficult. But that was sort of a random game. Usually you'd see him top lane, and honestly he's still extremely effective because what does he do? He builds a ridiculous amount of tanky stats. He has a ridiculous amount of sustain in his kits, so not only does he counter the popular lethality at the very moment, but he's able to just disrupt and make the lives of the current meta ADCs like Jhin, like Varus, maybe even MF, just a living hell. All in all, just the champions that are currently popular or more or less meta don't really seem to have the best answer when it comes to dealing with Singed, and he's insanely obnoxious to face, especially a Singed that actually understands the champion and knows exactly what they're doing. Like I said earlier, sort of taking a bit of a risk here picking Singed into one of these videos, but I generally feel like if you understand the champion, right now he's in a pretty damn good spot. And most people won't really know how to deal or how to answer a Singed just kind of going off. But let's quickly take a look at the build you want to run whenever you decide to play Singed. So in terms of items, you're running a lot of items that kind of give you utility, movement, speed, and just overall synergize with your kit very well. Righteous Glory helps you chase. Obviously getting something like this Raw Portal will make you just that much more annoying. Rallies plus the mask will just make your damage on your Q insanely strong while also giving you even more utility. But all in all, it does sort of come down to whatever you're facing and what helps you and what you need in the current game, but this is a pretty good rough outline. Mastery's Deathfire Touch is without question the way to go because it honestly just perfectly combines with your kit. And for your runes, you want to run Move Speed Quints, and then you want to run either Magic Penetration Reds or Armor Reds depending on what you're facing, just how armor or AD heavy the enemy team is, and things like that. But let's move on to some of the champions that I'm sure you have been familiar with for quite some time, the first of which being Graves. Again, nothing really changed about Graves just yet. I personally think he is still among the best champions currently in League of Legends, and he has been for the past several patches. The fact that Riot is not touching or nerfing him whatsoever is very questionable. I don't feel like there's a whole lot to say about Graves other than what I have already said in the past like 6 videos talking about the best champions in the current patch. He's very strong, he's got good wave clear, he's got good gank potential, he's a ranged champion, he's got strong burst, he's got sustained damage. He's hard to kill because of his True Grip passive, and I mean overall just a solid champion, can do a lot, works with lethality, works with the current items, fits the meta. You want to ban him or you want to pray he's on your team. It's really that simple. But very quickly, here's the build that you want to do when playing Graves. Again, you want to run the sort of lethality, defensive-ish sort of build, the Warrior Enchantment, Yomus for the pure damage, and then Edge of Night, Black Cleaver, Phantom Dancer, all items that give you offensiveness while also simultaneously giving you defensive stats as well. Very effective, and it just works perfectly on Graves. Thunderlords for the Keystone because it just simply adds to your burst, and then for the runes for Graves, you definitely want to run some attack speed, you want to run HP per level, magic resistance, and lethality. Very standard, almost like an ADC-ish sort of page, but it works, it makes Graves OP, and you should simply run it. But moving along to yet another jungle champion, we have Hecarim. I'm getting honestly kind of sick and tired of talking about Hecarim. I feel like all I do is mention Hecarim in these videos, but he is still a very good champion. He still has not gotten nerfed. He still gets the exact same build every single time because literally nothing has changed and nothing has made him weaker, and nothing has really made too many other champions just flat out stronger. I mean, he's not the best jungler at the very moment because again, I do feel like Graves is just flat out better, and potentially even the next champion I'm talking about might arguably be better as well. But the point is the fact that he is still a consistently good jungler. He is still very tanky, he still provides a lot of damage, he has so much move speed and gap close that it makes a lot of the ADCs currently that are popular, again Jhin, Varus, Misfortune, even maybe Asher Sivir, have a very difficult time to deal with him. His jungle pathing is very good, is very fast, he can use his W to heal off of those Wraiths or the Raptors very easily. Just a solid, consistent champion all around, and I feel like he is definitely someone that you don't want to head because he'll not only do a lot of damage, but be very difficult to kill. The build for Hecarim is as follows. It seems like Courage of the Colossus is still the way to go. Items, Cinderhug, Trinity Force, and then tanky offensive-ish items like Deadman's Plate, and then things like Visage, Guardian's Angel, or just depending on what you're facing and what kind of resistances that you need. For the most part, Trinity Force is your only true offensive item. Other than that, pretty simple stuff. But let's talk about yet another jungle champion, one that I'm seeing a lot more frequently as well, running different builds, being very obnoxious, and if played correctly, can easily take over the game. Shaco. He is also a champion that I've talked about a few times already because, well, I mean, he is still about the same thing. He hasn't got nerfed, the items on him are still very strong, and you can even play him in this sort of pseudo-tank type build and be just as effective, if not arguably even more effective. So his early game definitely is a little bit weaker as prior to the rework, but he is still very good because he can still wave clear the jungle very fast, he can still gank the lanes quite effectively as long as you max your Q first, which you should be, and overall he actually scales pretty damn decently. He can do a lot of disruption, you can get to the backline and just burst down an ADC very quickly, especially if you're running a full AD, kind of a full lethality build, and just overall an annoying champion to deal with, especially if he's ahead. So at the moment, Shaco using lethality, very effective. Definitely not a champion you want to face when a player is using them and using them correctly, so you might want to be very careful with this pick. So the build I want to show you guys with Shaco now, as opposed to the previous iteration I showed you in the last video like this one, is sort of this tanky-ish kind of build where you go Warriors, Trinity Force, Knight's Edge, then you go for something like a Sterax, Titanic Hydra. There's great synergy with the items, you're still very strong, you're also very tanky and hard to kill, and trust me, this build is very good. Another version you can do that I've seen some people run is instead you go for the attack speed jungle item, and then you go for something like a Sunfire Cape, Titanic Hydra, and just a little bit of offensive or defensive items, and you scale late game pretty damn well regardless. Now the final champion I want to talk about in the jungle, I'm sorry I always talk about so many jungle champions, but I genuinely believe that the jungle role is just the most effective and has the most impact. Regardless, the final champion is Zac. I'm sure you guys have seen through some of my videos and my journey to master, Zac is a very interesting champion. Usually, not always, but usually he shows up, and he shows up damn well, because a lot of the times you are going to have teams that you face where they're just either full AD or full AP, and if that happens, well, Zac is just the absolute perfect champion, a perfect man for the job. Even when the team has, you know, a fairly decent amount of mixed damage, he is still really good because he has just one of the best engages in League of Legends in general. Elastic Slingshot level 5, my goodness, he's literally flying across half of the map. But once he finally does get onto those immobile champions, Jhin, Varus, Misfortune, Ashe, Sivir, maybe someone like Victor in the mid lane, or Nivea, or something like that, Lux, he can stick on them and he can make their life a living nightmare. There's just not a lot they can do. He's very hard to kill, and for some magical reason, he ends up doing quite a bit of damage as well. And then once you finally manage to just somehow barely kill him, well, what do you know, his passive is there, ready to go. Chances are the top laner is going to teleport to one of his blobs and he's just back up, ready to go. Just not a fun champion to face, especially if he's ahead. Very difficult to kill, very hard to deal with, but if he's on your team and he's popping off, then you should be very thankful to have him. Regardless, let's take a very quick look at Zac's build. Just like Hecarim, Courage of the Colossus seems to be the optimal keystone to go. For your runes, you want to run a combination of CDR, magic penetration, HP per level, and maybe a little bit of armor in the yellows if you so choose, and flat AP Quins. You can maybe switch out the Quins for instead just flat CDR. It kind of comes down to what you prefer and what, you know, just fits your playstyle. And your items are going to be just essentially pure tank, Cinderhulk, maybe Deadman's Plate, Spirit Visage, Randuin's. It really just depends again, what are you facing, how much damage do they have, and what kind of damage is it, and then you want to build according to it. But let's finally leave that damn jungle and let's move over to mid lane, because there's definitely some champions we should talk about here. The first of which being LeBlanc. Now supposedly LeBlanc is going to be getting nerfed pretty damn hard next patch, so you might want to try to abuse her while you can, assuming she's not banned, because at least in my experience, she's banned about 9 out of 10 games. But she's banned for good reason. I mean, the champion is just obnoxious. She has a lot of gap close, she's got insane amount of damage, she's got good wave clear, she can catch people off, and the amount of trickery and outplays that LeBlanc can dish out and actually trying to keep track of what she's doing and what she's gonna do next is very, very difficult, and a very skilled LeBlanc player can make literally magic happen. All in all, she still has one of the best laning phases of most assassins, being able to kill a lot of people level 2 or level 3, especially with the Ignite. Not a champion that's easy to gank as well. She can roam pretty well. Her ultimate, if you use the clone properly, can be extremely deceptive as well. And I mean, all in all, LeBlanc, a very solid champion, but I'll be surprised if you can even get her in the solo queue game just because of how often she's banned. But somehow, if you end up getting LeBlanc, and luckily through the banning phase, then here's the build that you want to run. Thunderlords is without question your keystone of choice. For items, you want to go Morellonomicon. I like the Lichbane personally because a lot of the times how you can play LeBlanc is you can W in, you can Q auto attack with the Lichbane, it's a lot of damage, then you can use your ult W to go back in and go for the kill, or you can just do the WQ auto attack with the Lichbane to just scare people off and poke them down. It's actually surprisingly quite effective. But the point here is you get 40% CDR just from items, so for your runes you want to run Flatamar or MR per level blues. The next champion in the mid lane I want to talk about is Ahri. I generally feel like she's actually a very good pick at the moment. She's very consistent. She's not OP necessarily, but she's so good to the point where she's never a bad pick either, and you can almost never go wrong in picking her either. But if you decide to go the build that I'll show you in just a bit, she can actually arguably be considered to be overpowered. Regardless, good wave clear, good harass, decent sustain in the laning phase, has great cash potential, has mobility to try and avoid champions like Singed, Hecarim, Graves, Shaco, Talon, whatever. And she is overall just a very solid, consistent champion that I recommend you pick up if you haven't. Let's quickly take a look at the build that you want to run. Thunderlords for your keystone, and for your items, Protobelt into Lichbane is actually quite strong, gives you a lot of burst. Your ultimate constantly resets the item activation of Lichbane, and it puts you in a position to auto attack to proc the Lichbane, and then after that, you want to go the standard AP items. But the final champion I want to talk about before we go into a few honorable mentions is going to be Talon, being played in the mid lane or in the top lane. A lot of people call him the easier or the dumber version of Zed. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But the point is, and what I do know is true, he's very strong. He has insane roam, probably one of the best roams of all assassins in general. He has just absolutely magnificent burst. His stealth is just very effective at the moment and it's hard to deal with. All in all, Talon, a lot of damage, works with lethality, can assassinate targets very easily, brings in the AoE damage, has invisibility, has roam potential, has wave clear. Pretty damn good champion. And I've seen Talons carry games way too many times. The build for him is as follows. You can go Thunderlords if you want to just be very offensive, or you can go Storm Raider Surge, which is also just as good, if not maybe even better. For items, you want to go Boots of Mobility so you can roam and go over walls that much faster. Full lethality build with the Black Cleaver, and then the Guardian's Angel seems to be the best choice. Now very quickly, I want to talk about a few honorable mentions, the first of which being two ADCs, Varus and Jhin. I've talked about them several times and they're without question the best ADCs at the moment, with MF just right behind them. But the reason they're so good is because they abuse lethality, they have really good poke damage in their kit. Even though they're immobile, they can stay in the back and try and avoid the assassinations or the rundowns by Hecarim, by Singed, by even Ahri or Talon or Shaco, and it's very effective to have. Varus, especially with his Q poke, if he ever gets ahead with the lethality, is just insanely obnoxious. But following them, we also have Kha'Zix in the jungle, probably still one of the best junglers at the moment next to maybe Rengar, but Kha'Zix definitely among the better ones because he is still very strong with the lethality, he still snowballs like a madman, and he can easily take over games, having good jungle clear, having good gank potential early to late. But I feel like I've talked about him a little too much, so I put him in the honorable mentions instead. But either way, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you did enjoy the video. Hit that like button if you did, share this with your friends, subscribe if you haven't, check out my other videos as well, but I hope to see you for the next one. Peace.